Hello and welcome to another Yorkshire football podcast. I'm your host Dom, and today I'm joined by three footballing fans from around Yorkshire. One you're familiar with from last week, that is John Riley. All right, John, Sheffield Wednesday fan.
Hey mate, how you doing?
The other is one of my fellow Bradfordians, Mike Helinski, Bradford City fan. All right, Mike?
All well, Dom, yourself?
I'm all right, thanks, mate. Not bad. And last, by no means least, my often replacement on this podcast, Leeds United fan, Tom Carnduff. Hi, Tom.
Hello.
So, lads, as ever on these lockdown podcasts, I'll start by asking you how you're doing or after another week of being locked in the house.
It's getting boring now, isn't it? It's getting boring.
Yeah,
There's only so much FIFA and retro nostalgic football you can watch, but we're all in it together.
That's true. John, what about you, mate? You look well miserable.
Yeah, I'm doing all right, to be honest, mate. This weather's absolutely amazing, isn't it? So,
I wish I could do more with it. I'd love a trip to Seaside.
Yeah, I can't complain, pal. I'm one of these very positive. I'm only pessimistic about Wednesday. Anything else, I'm quite positive.
Well, that's good to know. Well, let's talk to the pessimist himself, Mike Helinski. How are you doing?
Well, mate, very well. Buzzing for another 3 weeks of this. Enjoying being at home, getting jobs done. House has never looked so clean, never looked so organised. So, yeah, it looks all good, mate.
Oh, mate, I'm absolutely buzzing. I'm glad that you're all very well. We will get into our feature match of the week, and it's an absolute belter we've got coming up for you. But first, lads, it has been given to me by I nearly called him boss then, but that would have been too much. But Adam Everington, he has set a topic for us this week, and it is your favourite ever manager of your club. Who is the man who has been the shining light throughout your time supporting Bradford City? Now, I think we should set some rules. So it has to be someone who's managed during your time supporting the club. So you can't go back in time. Tom, I know you were thinking Don Revie straight off the bat.
Okay.
So I'll tell you what, we'll start with you then, Tom. Who has been your favourite ever Leeds manager since, when were you born? 2009, something like that?
Yeah. So I'm only 10. I've thought of this for quite a while. Today, I was kind of weighing it up, because I was born in 94, so I missed Leeds winning the title. There was also the Division 2 promotion shortly before. So really, the only three that have kind of been any form of successful during my time alive at Leeds, I'm probably the worst generation of Leeds supporter, because it started well and it's all been downhill since then. So it's between David O'Leary, obviously, the Champions League era, Simon Grayson for finally achieving a promotion at the club. But as we're recording this on Zoom and I can change the background, I'm going to go for this man with his big flag. Kevin Blackwell. No, Marcelo Bielsa. I'm going to go for the current Leeds manager, because...
Why? What's he done?
Yeah, it's not achieved.
Well, you don't have to achieve anything, really. It's about the journey, Dom. And we're too obsessed with the end result. When he got the job, you kind of knew of him anyway. From the one that stuck out was his Bilbao team going to Manchester United and just completely tearing them apart. But you kind of read all the stories about how he's not really won much, but yet he's seen as this godlike figure in South America, across the world, really, and why so many players look up to him and why so many players list him as an inspiration. And you kind of look to the honours list. I suppose that's what you do when you appoint any manager, but it's just been phenomenal. He's taken a team that was just struggling in mid-table, a team that I think that season it really kind of hit home again, that Leeds came close to the playoffs under Monk. They then reverted and went back to mid-table, and you kind of looked at that squad and it was going to take an absolute miracle to do anything with. And he came in and virtually overnight just completely transformed it. And I think his first game in charge competitively was Stoke at home at the start of last season. And I've never been more surprised by a Leeds team and a Leeds result. I remember looking at the team sheet, and you'd probably argue that the bench looked a lot better than the starting 11. There were a lot of concerns and not much had changed. And it just came out of the blocks and absolutely blew Stoke away over 90 minutes. And then since then, it's just been uphill. Of course, there was the playoff defeat last year, but it's just getting better and better. I mean, with 9 games to go, 7 points clear in a really good position. But just his entire time at the club has been nothing short of exceptional. He's completely revolutionised everything, really, not just the team, but the attitudes around the club, the community as well. So for me, considering I'm still going to cling on to youth, I'm going to have to go Bielsa just for the pure joy that he's really brought over 2 seasons.
I think if I was to play the neutral here, he's clearly doing something right at Leeds United. The fans love him for a start, which is a difficult thing to do going into Leeds United as a manager. But also, Leeds do seem to be playing well. Obviously, they were within touching distance of the playoffs last year, which was an improvement, obviously, on the season before. But they look like a proper squad this year. Although they've had some inconsistencies, the way they're playing football is impressive, for use of a better term.
Yeah, it's been good, and I think we often overlook last season that you look at the 3-horse race as it was between Leeds, Norwich, and Sheffield United. Norwich had 2 seasons before Norwich and Sheffield United, had a season before where they both finished in mid-table. They had a season to kind of solidify themselves under that manager, whereas Leeds came in and basically went from mid-table to a side battling for promotion. So many of those players didn't know what that was like. And they just get better and better. They said last year it won't be as hard. Bielsa didn't seem that concerned about promotion last year because he kept saying it won't be as hard this year. And you can see it now, and they look a real squad that's just getting better and better. And why the top of the league now?
Well, ultimately, though, Tom, you are still in the Championship, Leeds United. So what? And really, other than what galvanising a team and bringing the fans back on board with Leeds United, do you think that your like for Bielsa is what you assume is going to happen? You assume he's going to get you promoted? Because obviously you don't get promoted this year. Is he going to stick around?
He won't stick around 100% if Leeds don't go up this year. Nobody might go up this year. Nobody knows what's going on. But I don't know. I think it's the ultimate debate of, would you rather slightly miss out but watch that team play every week for 46 games as they did under Bielsa, or would you rather play an awful style of football and get promoted? That's the kind of balance that you've got to find. But for me, it's just pure enjoyment. You kind of want to go and watch that team. You also expect that team to win as well, which is just remarkable after years and years of supporting Leeds, multiple relegations, constantly being mid-table. You expect to turn up everywhere and win. So, like I said at the start, it's clear to see why he is such a influential figure in football, because that coaching side clearly has an effect on the player, but his personality as well just clearly kind of radiates with fans, not just of Leeds, but at Bilbao, at Marseille, Newell's Old Boys as well, who would name their stadium after him. He's a popular figure, and it's clear to see why.
But you've chosen there Bielsa over David O'Leary, who for my generation was the Leeds manager, obviously had a great deal of success at Leeds. Why Bielsa over him?
It's tough because I watched Leeds v Liverpool, the 4-3 games on Sky Sports on Saturday, Sunday, one of them. So I watched that, and that was the first Leeds team I ever watched, and that was quite something. I think it's just the circumstances that for years Leeds made the playoff final in 2006 and they promoted again in 2010. So you could argue for 8 years before Bielsa, it was constant disappointment. It was constant mid-table failings, off-the-field issues, whereas Leeds in the lead-up to that O'Leary team, they'd obviously won the division in 92, and then since then it kind of, overall, I know there was a bit of a dodgy season after, but it had overall been pretty good up until that point. So for me, for kind of just the transformation, I'd want to say, of the Leeds side from a club that has just underachieved massively for 8 years, and then almost overnight are suddenly a big player in the Football League, are catching, the attention of everyone, going to Arsenal in the FA Cup. And I think the best way to describe it it's when your favourite band goes mainstream and everyone finds out about them. Just stuff like that really kind of hits home just the impact that he's made. And I think that's why, for me and my lifetime, he'd probably be the best.
So can Tom just kind of rank these in his top 5 then for me? Right, I want Darko Milanic, Dave Hockaday, Brian McDermott, Dennis Wise, and Uwe Rosler, please, the top 5.
So starting at the bottom, Hockaday, then Dennis Wise, then who is it? Rosler, Milanic, and
McDermott, Redfern.
Oh, okay. Redfern top. McDermott up the top as well, and yeah, I'd have Rosler and Milanic mid-table. They were barely there. They were there for about 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good answer. McDermott must be near the top. Obviously, it only kept Wednesday to 6 goals when we beat you 6-0. So that must have been a big success.
Yeah. So, the halftime substitute of Matt Smith proved influential in that game.
Okay, Tom, thanks very much. Tom picking Marcelo Bielsa there as his all-time favourite Leeds United manager. John Riley, we'll move on to you. Sheffield Wednesday. Who has been Sheffield Wednesday's greatest manager in your time supporting the Owls?
This is a tough one because I've actually gone with my favourite manager rather than the best. In my lifetime, we've had Ron Atkinson twice, Trevor Francis, David Pleat, Steve Bruce, quite a number of different managers, good and bad. Bad being kind of your Peter Shreves, Terry Yoraths, Dave Jones towards the end. But my favourite manager this time, I'm going to go with Brian Laws. Came in halfway through a season, well, a third of the way through the season. And he just kind of managed to get loads of terrible players to perform really, really well. And we kind of got to the verge of the playoffs, but just couldn't make it. I think it was the 2006-2007 season. We had like a front pairing of Tudgay, Steve McLean, and Dion Burton, Glenn Whelan in midfield, Chris Brunt on the wing. And we just had like a really entertaining team. We went to Leicester and beat them 4-1 with like 3 absolute screamers. We had a couple of 3-2s at home, 3-2 away. And I think if we'd have started that season a little bit better, we'd have been right in with a chance of like making the playoffs. But Brian Laws, we beat Sheffield United at home. And we beat, actually, I think he was the manager for the double as well, but we beat them at home. And then he ran down the touchline with his scarf that his wife had given him, a blue and white scarf. And he just kind of completely endeared him to the Wednesday fans. And then he managed to win at Bramall Lane away from home. So you could see in the goal, but Marcus Tudgay hits a rocket from about 25, 30 yards into the top corner. Last time that either side completed a double in the derby. And it was our first win at Bramall Lane for years. Favourite manager, really like the guy. He does a lot of kind of BBC Sheffield commentaries now or on the iPlayer.
Well, he used to manage Scunthorpe as well, didn't he?
Yeah, Scunthorpe, Burnley, Grimsby, I think.
So why have you picked Brian Laws over some of the managers that took charge of Sheffield Wednesday during the Premier League era, for instance? Because you got a few years of that, didn't you?
Yeah, so I'm just going on fit, just purely because in my lifetime. So Trevor Francis was the manager when I first started going to games. And while I think that he did a great job getting us to 2 cup finals in '93, I feel that in my time, that kind of 93, 94, 94, 95, he kind of disbanded that team too quickly. And I think if we'd had a different manager for those seasons, Wednesday would have not been in the kind of struggles we saw at the end of the Premier League in the end of the 2000s, 99-2000s. Then we had David Pleat, who had one really good season. We finished 7th. But then again, the season after we struggled, kind of tarnished that. Danny Wilson was a disaster. Terry Yorath, Peter Shreves, Paul Jewell, all disasters.
You mentioned 2 Bradford City legends in there, John.
Yeah, I know. Paul Sturrock came in and kind of reinvigorated the club. He was a close second, Paul Sturrock, actually. He came in when we were bottom half of the old league. So, no, it was League One back then. Yeah, it was League One. But yeah, we came back and got us up at the Millennium Stadium and we did really well. But no, yeah, Dave Jones got us promoted above Sheffield United. It could have potentially been him, but he just had such a negative aura about him. He wasn't well, even though he had this unbelievable end to a season that got us promoted. The next season, he just kind of, everything he was saying and doing was just so negative that kind of a lot of fans got on his back, and it just wasn't a right fit, I think. Even though we had initial success, it just wasn't the right fit. and then brings me on to Carlos. Carlos gave me the best season I've had watching Wednesday in a decade, but made two mistakes for me in two key games that I think cost us big, and that's the reason why I can't have him as my favourite. The one is he brought Sam Hutchinson back into the team for the playoff final against Hull when Alex Lopez had been playing unbelievably for about a month before, and he got into a really good system with Kieran Lee and Bannon. But Hutchinson came back from injury, and he put him straight into the squad, thinking that he could kind of outmuscle Hull's midfield, which was Livermore and Huddleston. It was completely the wrong way to go about it. What we should have done is what got us through against Brighton is play Lopez and outplay them, outpass them, and basically go get it that way. But he tried to outmuscle them, it just didn't work, and it was a shame. And the second mistake he made, we were 1-0 up against Huddersfield in the playoff semi-final second leg. Fletcher's bullying their strikers, their defenders up top, scored a goal to make it 1-0, run his way to Wembley. And he took him off and put Jordan Rhodes on with about half an hour to go. And Rhodes couldn't play up front on his own, and it was just so obvious. And the ball just never stopped coming back at us, and the equaliser was coming. So those two massive mistakes in two huge games, I just can't overlook. So yeah, my favourite manager, I'm going with it, Brian Laws.
Okay, thanks, John. Well, moving on to Mike Helinski then at Bradford City. I'm sure we've both got the same answer to this one, but Mike, I'll let you go first. Who's your favourite ever Bradford City manager?
Yeah, well, obviously it's a bit easier for us, Dawn, being Bradford fans. We haven't got a rich list to choose from, but still,
there's a long list to work through, though.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm a bit split between two in my era, and that's Paul Jewell and Phil Parkinson. So if I start with Paul Jewell, obviously what he did to take Bradford into the Premier League for the first time in 77 years was just unbelievable. That whole season, the way the squad was together. No one tipped us for promotion that season. We started off the season quite badly as well. I think we went around 6 games without a win, and then picked up a bit of form. So yeah, and then obviously to go into the Premier League and then to stay in the Premier League as well, winning dramatically on the last day of the season to beat Liverpool. The only downside to that is I think that prevented Liverpool getting the Champions League and Leeds taking that 4th spot, if I remember rightly. So it was a tough one, and I was leaning a bit towards Joel, but then you sort of look at what Phil Parkinson did, and it's still just unbelievable to his point where he came in, he kept us up in League Two in his first season. In his second season, we got promoted, and then obviously the cup runs, like to get to a League Cup final as a League Two team and beat the teams we did on the way. It's still unbelievable, and to be honest, I can't ever see it being done again. Yeah, we got stuffed in the final, but we should have probably been stuffed by so many teams on the way. So Swansea just basically did what a lot of the other teams probably should have done. And then obviously the cup run with Chelsea in the FA Cup, beating Chelsea, taking Mourinho's home record. Parks also got us to the playoffs that year in League One. We lost in the over 2 legs in the semi-finals against Millwall. So yeah, I think it's going to have to be Parkinson, because just what he came into a team that wasn't doing very well, turned it round, and we just went from strength to strength each season. The squad he built, it was so united. Most of the players had Claret and Amber running through the veins. Like you look at Gary Jones, like you dream of having a player like him. He was sort of like the McCall of that era. So yeah, I think it's Phil Parkinson, but very closely followed by Paul Jewell.
I think Phil Parkinson's kind of like that romantic choice, really, isn't he? Because he came to Bradford City on the back of a decade of misery, which I think we've had similar stories between all of us talking about our favourite managers, is that the ones that we've picked seem to come in when the club we support's in a pit of misery, really. Bielsa obviously coming in, turning things around at Leeds. Laws came in at a time where Sheffield Wednesday weren't performing necessarily very well. And then Phil Parkinson comes into Bradford. You know, they'd nearly been relegated from the Football League. They'd had terrible managers like Peter Taylor. Peter Jackson came in and couldn't really change things around. So it was a really grim time for Bradford. And then Phil Parkinson came in and worked a miracle, really, totally rebuilt the squad, brought in players, like you say, like Gary Jones, who, despite the fact he probably only had one good season for us at Bradford, became a legend. and is still well connected with the club today. Stephen Darby, another one who had Claret and Amber running through his veins. I think that squad were the ideal squad to get us out of the mess that we'd found ourselves in League Two, and getting promoted, getting to a cup final, a couple of trips to Wembley in one season as a League Two club is just, it's like you said, it's unthinkable, really. And I think I agree with you that the top two would be Phil Parkinson and Paul Jewell. What Paul Jewell achieved was incredible, and he'd always been there as assistant. He was assistant to Chris Kamara and stuff like that, and there wasn't much hope for him. But then he did that, and he's not only done it with Bradford, he did it with Wigan, and who else did he take up? Sheffield. It wasn't Sheffield, was it? Derby. No. Did he take Derby up?
Did he take Derby up?
Sounds about right.
He definitely took Wigan up anyway. But yeah, very good manager, Paul Jewell, and obviously had ties with Bradford because he'd been a player as well. But I just think what Phil Parkinson did for the club and where we were at and what we were coming up on the back of, he just seemed to understand Bradford, what we needed, the type of players we needed, and it all came together nicely. And without question, he's the best manager. I think had Stuart McCall got us promoted at that playoff final under the circumstances that he did, then he'd have been right up there for me as well. He's a manager, Stuart McCall, who deserves success. I think we all love him as Bradford fans, and he's been mistreated on both previous managerial, both previous times he's managed at Bradford City. But I think, yeah, Phil Parkinson, without a shadow of a doubt, those pictures that we see of him at Wembley in front of the Bradford fans, what he means to Bradford fans now is, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think that backs up my claims that Bradford City are, without question, the greatest team to support, because we've experienced Europe, we've experienced the Premier League. Yes, the Intertoto Cup counts, Tom. I can see your funny face pulling.
Not saying anything, boys. Not saying anything.
Premier League, and then we've experienced what it's like to be really bad, really crap, to be right at the bottom of the Football League with a terrible manager at the helm. And to go on a cup run, being in that position, to get to a cup final, being in that position, to beat a Premier League club in the FA Cup, being in the position that we were, just is what football's all about for me. And I feel bad for fans that have not been able to experience that. We've experienced the full spectrum of what football has to offer. So that's it. Phil Parkinson, he's the choice.
Where would you boys rank out the three to take a John Riley rank the scenario? League Two playoff final, Chelsea FA Cup, or that League Cup run? We'll chuck that all in one. Or maybe if you want to specify, we'll chuck the Arsenal and the Villa home leg games together to represent the League Cup.
Yeah, if it was me, the League Cup run, I'd take that League Cup run over the promotion and the FA Cup, just because it was like living in a fairy tale. Like, we weren't supposed to beat Arsenal, we weren't supposed to beat Aston Villa, and we weren't supposed to get to a cup final. And the final aside, it was nice to be there and stuff like that, and the atmosphere was great. But getting there was what made it for us. And it almost just seemed to be a bit of a cherry on the cake getting promoted that season. But the real meat on the bones for me was the League Cup run. Chelsea was great as well. But to be able to have those three scenarios to pick from is just unbelievable, considering the crap decade we'd had prior to that.
True.
Yeah,
true.
I was going to say, yeah, Dom, I agree with you. I think League Cup for me, number one, just because of the whole journey of it and the teams are beating. Like, we all remember Villa, we all remember beating Arsenal, but the two games for me in the whole of that was Burton at home. We were losing 2-0 to Burton at home, and we turned it around and won 3-2. And Stephen Darby scored the winner from about 25 yards out. So that for me was just, that moment was just unbelievable. And then I was at Wigan away, and we took 5,000 allocation, the full allocation we were given, and the game was 0-0, and we won 4-2 on penalties. And
that was the game of the cup run for me. That's the one that people don't really talk about. But yeah, if you were there, you saw what the players were putting in, and you saw the effect that Phil Parkinson had on them. And I can remember Zavon Hines, it was in like the 110th minute, and he was legging it down the wing, and his legs just cramped up. He turned into a pretzel on the pitch. And you just knew that we had a good team there, and you knew that we were capable of doing great things as a team, and we did. And it was all thanks to Phil Parkinson.
Exactly, and let's not forget as well, Wigan were a Premier League side then as well. So it's not as if we're talking Wigan of now. We're talking Premier League side Wigan that we beat, and then like I said, we went on to beat Arsenal, Villa, and then in second, for me, I think I don't know, I'm split between the two, because when we came out of the League Cup final, we were 11 points off the playoffs. So no one really thought we were going to get that 7th spot, and we went on an unbelievable run, taking that spot later on. So again, I think that itself was just unbelievable.
But the way Bradford went about it as well, like Burton came to us and we lost to them and we were behind, and then we went to their place and we beat them.
Yeah.
And they'd made scarves already that said Burton's going to Wembley and stuff like that on it. It was absolutely mad.
Yeah, they had the buses, they had the hotels, booked everything. They literally just thought it was nailed on. But then, like I said, the Chelsea one, again, what a day. Like, but that team they had out, how strong it was, Mourinho's home record, just everything around it. So, yeah, it's tough, but definitely League One, number one for me.
Okay, well, we're about the midway through the podcast. We've all picked our favourite ever managers. Coming up next on the Yorkshire Football Podcast, we're going to be dissecting one of Yorkshire's great derbies this week, chosen by the great John Riley. Okay, welcome back to the Yorkshire Football Podcast, and it is that time of the show where we delve into one of the great Yorkshire games, and this week's choice comes from John Riley. John, what have you gone for?
So I've gone for Rotherham 2, Sheffield Wednesday 3 from the 2014-2015 season. Now, it's kind of a strange rivalries, Rotherham and Sheffield Wednesday, because we're their greatest rivals. We're kind of number one. But they're kind of just a local team for us. If we're in different divisions, I think most Wednesday fans would admit that they actually want them to do quite well. But when it comes to the day of the game and once it's kicked off, we want to beat them just as much we would Sheffield United or Barnsley, Leeds, or anyone else for that matter. So, yeah, it was an absolutely incredible game. I was in the away end this day. 5-goal thriller. All 5 goals coming in the second half. 3 of them coming almost in injury time from the 86th minute onwards. It's just an absolute great game, and one of those where you walk out thinking, did that just happen at half-time? Nobody could have seen this coming. So, yeah, absolutely amazing.
Well, it was everything that you hoped for from a derby, really, wasn't it? I mean, early on as well, the keepers were unbelievable. I know that everyone, when they talk about this game, talks about the goals, but the keepers, Westwood in particular, were unbelievable.
Yeah, Westwood makes a great save in the first half from Matt Derbyshire. When it looked like, well, where I was sat, it looked easy to score, but yeah, Westwood made himself really big and made a save. And then the Rotherham keeper, I think, was Martinez on the day, who was probably on loan from Arsenal, who he had on loan earlier, a couple of years earlier. Made a great save low down to his right from Lewis McGugan. McGugan actually plays a huge part throughout the game, and it's really easy to forget like how good a player he was. He kind of, I know he did really well at Forest, came through there, went on to Reading, and then we got him. And like for a couple of seasons, he was great, but there was always that kind of lingering thing about his attitude. But in this one, he sets up a couple of goals, goes close himself. Yeah, it's a great game. Rotherham fans might not see it that way. And to be honest, we finished 10th, 11th that season, so it didn't really make too much difference to our season. It's just nice to have bragging rights for a week or two.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you what, let's take in the first of those 5 goals.
Chipped into the box. Vermeil will head this one clear as far as Pringle, who shoots deflected it in. Rotherham lead, and it's Ben Pringle again. Well, I wonder if he'll be on Twitter again tonight as Ben Pringle celebrates in front of the Rotherham end. It took a wicked deflection. The wrong-footed Kieran Westwood, and it's the Millers who lead in this South Yorkshire derby. 56 gone, Rotherham 1, Sheffield Wednesday 0.
That's a wig, surely.
Yeah, it was. It stands out a little bit. So it's funny about him scoring in the second half. So the reference in the commentary to him, would it be him again on Twitter?
Yeah, I was wondering this.
So he scored the winning. We played Rotherham in one of the first round of the League Cup the season before, so our first game at the New York Stadium, and he'd scored the winner. I think we got beat 2-1. And on Twitter afterwards, someone had given him a shirt or something like that that said "Pig Killer," which is reference to the rivalry between Wednesday United, not so much Rotherham. So the reference to him kind of going on Twitter again was that. But yeah, so at this point, Rotherham fans are probably thinking, rubbing their hands together, thinking they're getting 3 points in their cup final.
I mean, fair play, it's a decent strike, but it takes a massive deflection, and he celebrates like he's just scored like the world's greatest ever goal.
Yeah, but what you've got to consider is Rotherham to Wednesday is like Leeds to Man United. So Rotherham think it's a derby, and Wednesday don't. Whereas Leeds think that they've got a derby with Man United, and Man United don't. So can you
I'm
imagine?
not going to rise to it.
So can you imagine if a Leeds player scored a goal against Man United at home like this? They'd be kind of building a statue for them next to Bremner. So he can, kind of guess how the Rotherham players and fans were feeling at this point. Absolutely ecstatic.
Well, I can imagine how they were feeling when the Sheffield Wednesday equaliser went in.
Gugan with his foot on the ball finds Vermeil. Now Maguire down the right-hand side looking for Lewis McGugan by the right corner flag. McGugan's got away from his man. Lewis McGugan for Wednesday. Crosses it in, real chance. And yes! It is Keelan Lavery who scores 4 minutes from time. Wonderful work from McGugan. And he's picked out Keelan Lavery who equalises and celebrates with the Wednesday end. The South Yorkshire derby takes a twist and it looks like it's going to be a 1-1 draw. Rotherham 1, Wednesday 1.
What is that McGugan hairstyle? What's with all the crappy hair? It's not even that long ago.
Also the crappy defending in all of these goals.
Yeah, that's true.
We haven't even spoke about that disallowed goal in the first half, wasn't there? Where it was just...
Oh, where Westwood flapped it into his own net.
Oh, yeah, it's just awful. Like, Nuhu, isn't it? Like, heads it back or whatever. I don't know.
No, it's so it comes back in from a corner, and the great Connor Salmon jumps right into Kieran Westwood.
Oh, yes.
Knocked him away. Connor Salmon is probably the only striker who makes Atinuyu look graceful. So it's no surprise that it was allowed by the referee. But yeah, this goal equalised for Wednesday, 86th minute. We've been kind of baited by the home crowd for the previous 10, 20 minutes. It didn't look like it was going to be our day. We had some good chances early on, but they kind of dried up. And like I said before, Lewis McGugan kind of pulled us back into this. Great play down the wing. Cut inside his man, pulled it across, and there's Keelan Lavery, kind of with the freedom of the 6-yard box. Lovely. There's something about a diving header anyway. It's easy just kind of stoop and head a goal in. But a diving header, it's something special. Back of the net, and at that point, I think I, as a fan in the way end, would have been really happy with just taking a point.
Yeah, well, on that note, the Sheffield Wednesday fans must have had a right kick in the nuts when Rotherham went ahead yet again.
Great work from McGugan. He picked out Lavery. But at the other end, here's Jordan Barry. Barry coming forward with a chance maybe to win it for Rotherham. It's Barry scored! Seconds after Wednesday equalised, Jordan Barry has won it for Rotherham. Steve Evans is on the pitch. Wednesday so careless at the back, but the Rotherham fans won't care. Jordan Barry scores, and it's Rotherham 2, Wednesday 1.
Not great goalkeeping there at all.
Awful goalkeeping, awful defending. But it shows how late in the game this was because the commentator says he's won it for Rotherham.
Yeah, so that's the centre-back. I don't blame Westwood at all here. I think it's Claude Dielna, the centre-back for Wednesday on that day. He allows a player of like bang average ability, Jordan Bowery, to cut inside and get a shot off like that when you've just gone 1-0. In fact, it lets him kind of control the ball in the box. And I'm just not having it. There's no way in hell he should be getting that shot off. And when it goes into the corner, it's just so close to Westwood that it kind of goes under him. It was absolute kick in the teeth. This is something Wednesday are renowned for. I know every club thinks when it gets like the last minutes of injury time that they're susceptible to conceding. But Wednesday, it just seems to be the worst. Like holding a lead or having just equalised, we're always liable to concede again. It's just kind of something that's inbuilt. So even I've been at matches when we've been 3, 4, 5-0 up, and I've only started to kind of actually relax after about the 85th, 86th minute. And I don't know what it is. It might be just football fans in general, but on this case, it was probably the Rotherham fans who should have been thinking that way.
Well, inevitably, Sheffield Wednesday did equalise again. But before we go into that goal, can you see, lads, on the screen there, I've got it paused. Can you see at the top middle, what's Queen Victoria doing there?
Jesus, she's down with the Rotherham.
Queen Victoria, the Rotherham fan.
That's proper dressed up for a game of footy, isn't it?
Yeah, she's got like a little hat on.
What I love about this, though, watch her celebrate when spoiler alert, when Nuyu thunders in this header and he runs over to give it to the Rotherham fans. There's obviously 2 Wednesday fans just bang in front of him, and I don't even think they try and hide their celebration.
Well, let's take a look, and it looks like another assist from McGugan.
McGugan's crosses it. Yes! Equaliser, it's Ati-Nuhiu in stoppage time for Wednesday. What an end to this game as Rotherham United take the lead with 3 minutes to go. But Sheffield Wednesday will not give in. And Ati-Nuhiu has equalised with minutes to spare in stoppage time. And it is Rotherham United 2, Sheffield Wednesday 2.
Sheffield Wednesday will not give in 2-2, and you're right, there are some fans, one of them wearing a bright orange jacket, which isn't very inconspicuous.
So, much to the annoyance of my wife, I have sat in the home end a few times at various away grounds when I haven't been able to get a ticket. And I'd like to, and there's only been one occasion where I've celebrated like that, and that was Huddersfield away, 2016, I think, Forestieri scored. But I was, like I said, McGugan was unbelievable in this game. That lad just had real talent, real quality when he wanted to show it. Whipped in a ball, big Ate, kind of, luckily he didn't have to jump, because when he jumps, he actually goes about a foot short of his actual height. So he just stoops in, heads it in, the keeper's got no chance. And at that point, 2-2, you've gone 2-1 down in the 90th minute, you've dragged it back. Anything else here is an absolute bonus. But 2-2, you take a draw all day long.
John, it's not
a free kick
in the
is,
highlights.
by the way.
Yeah, an unbelievable free kick, whipped in with some pace. I mean, difficult actually for anyone to get on the end of. John, it doesn't mention in the commentary, but what was the 7 minutes added time for?
So actually, the game had kicked off 15 minutes later than every other game. There was an issue before kickoff, which meant we'd a reason why can't remember why exactly. I remember it kicking off at 3:15. I think there'd been a couple of injuries. I'm not sure why. I think basically when we'd scored late on in the 86th minute, obviously we'd celebrated for probably a minute or two. Then Rotherham had scored in the 89th, 90th minute. So there'd been a big amount of injury time there. I think it just got added on for that. Okay,
well, we're going to watch the winning goal now. Sheffield Wednesday's third of the match, the third in the 9 minutes of the game. But the referee's having a right laugh here, isn't he? Goes way over the 7 minutes added.
Well, he's probably just enjoying the game. I think as a commentator said, he's just enjoying it. So,
well, let's have a look. Let's have a look at that winning moment.
And after all of that, it looks like it's going to end up in a 2-2 draw. We've had the 7 minutes on my watch. The referee will allow play to continue for a few seconds more. Headed up towards Nuhiu. Nuhiu's in there. Stevie May back heel to Kieran Lee.
Oh. Yes!
Lee wins it with the last kick of the game for Wednesday. It's unbelievable here at the New York Stadium. Wednesday scored twice in stoppage time, and they have won the South Yorkshire Derby. Rotherham 2, Wednesday 3. You will never see a finish like this again.
Hang on a minute. What is the physio doing?
So the physio...
What's he doing?
So I don't know if you remember this guy, a bit of trivia here. But Wednesday had a famous physio back in the 90s called Alan Smith, who was also the England physio for a time. Really kind of like big Wednesday fan. He's got a practice up in Rotherham, actually. So his son, who took over the helm, is actually a huge Wednesday fan. So he was working at the club at the time. And once we'd scored, he sprinted down the touchline and we're celebrating. But it's actually quite funny because when Rotherham went 2-1 up through Bowery, Steve Evans did the very, very same thing.
Yeah, I remember that.
But only made it about 15 feet from the technical area. He didn't have the legs, unfortunately, to make it all the way to the celebrations. But yeah, so he recreated that. But again, that goal there is just Kieran Lee. Is why he's still one of my favourite Wednesday players. He's probably one of the best midfielders in the Championship at being able to run past strikers and getting on goal like that. And when Nuhiu kind of flicks the ball on, it drops to Stevie May. Stevie May is a cult hero at Wednesday because he was absolutely awful. And I mean, dreadful. He had this kind of, like long hair, ponytail. He was a bit scruffy. And he only scored a few goals. But he does this kind of back flick that lays it right into the path of Kieran Lee, who goes through and just pokes it past the keeper. It's absolute pandemonium.
That game had everything you could hope for from a derby. There were plenty of shots on target. It was end-to-end stuff. Goalkeepers were in great form in the early stages of the game, and then obviously you get 5 goals, and then a very, very, very late winner. And it's gone from Rotherham being in hysterics at going into the lead really late on, probably assuming that they've won, to Sheffield Wednesday, scoring 2 more goals and ended up winning 3-2. And I think that's a feeling that transcends football. When you win like that, it's just unbeatable, isn't it? I mean, it's one of the best feelings in football.
Yeah, when we'd celebrated, I landed that far away from where my mates were. To be fair, I haven't seen a couple of them since that match. We fell that far apart celebrating. It was a great day. And in fairness, though, like, as football does, it comes round. Like, we were kind of bragging on that day. Next season, Rotherham came to. It might have been, I think it was the next season or the season after. Rotherham came to Hillsborough and dug out a 1-0 win with Warnock as manager. So you can just imagine what the Wednesday fans' reaction to that was, and the Rotherham fans absolutely loved it. So yeah, it comes around. But like I say, when this happens to your club and it's your team in the 90th minute and the 97th minute, it's just the best feeling in the world. It's and without kind of coming across in cliche here, it's kind of why you go to football. It's that 5 minutes was just unadulterated, unbelievable ecstasy. It was amazing. If you bottle it, you'd be a millionaire.
Well, that is almost all we've got time for on today's Yorkshire Football Podcast. We will be back, of course, next week with a new panel of Yorkshire football fans and another game to delve into. Before we do go, we will say stay safe, stay inside, stay well, save the NHS. We are recorded on a night when all the clapping was going on outside. There's still no further news on what's going to happen to football. At least in the near future anyway. It's still being discussed. There's nothing really. The only news we've had is that we're all going to be locked down for at least another 3 weeks. So what I will say is thank you to John Riley, Tom Carnduff and Mike Kalinski. Once again, it's been a pleasure talking Yorkshire football with you lads.